to be, fully transparent, even when I was there just early April, I was like, maybe not quite my space, you know what I mean? But as of
Mm.
as of May 1st, I'm like quite possibly my space eventually, So like yeah, I it was just May 1st I ended up leaving my job and I'm like, you know what? I think I've tried everything. And I say that cuz I have a friend back in Phoenix. She looked at my LinkedIn. Just I don't know, she's just scouring the internet and she's all like, "Why do you have 52 experiences?" I was like, I don't know why. Is that not normal? What's going on? And so I think for me, I'm like, I think I've tasted everything that I've wanted to taste, and I'm like, oh, and I have yet to find what it is I'm looking for or where I can be in my zone of genius. And I was like, I think I'm gonna have to go out on my own, y'all. To some extent, unless there's places like the Conscious Exchange and the Exchange, and what y'all are doing. So it might
Yeah.
feel a little bit timely too. So, how? Go ahead.
It's crazy too. Well, one, congratulations on the work you have done, right? And I think
Hmm.
the real, like, while that could sometimes feel like a negative, you have so much experience and more. And the beauty about this case short, you're just starting, and that's the beauty. What we've seen, so I'm for those of you who don't know, I'm a second generation Filipino American, and what success looked like in my family was climbing the corporate ladder, having the stable job, and feeling that security. And
Hmm.
sometimes that looks like just being in a 9 to 5 so we can provide and support, which is
Hmm.
great and beautiful and nothing wrong with that. However, that's what my parents defined as success. So
Hmm.
I, for a long time, I thought I wanted to live that life, right? The trajectory, the goal, the ladder.
Hmm.
The beauty behind entrepreneurship and all the 52 things you have done is that you're trying things that you actually want to try and do and say. And you're just not stuck in a mundane role where you're not really growing.
I'm curious, how do you define entrepreneur? I say that because I think for a long time I thought my mom was an entrepreneur, is an entrepreneur. Not quite sure actually. I think I learned new language that she's more self-employed, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my mom, she came over and started her own business in adult care. So, living in the home with other elderly folks. And, not only did she have to wipe my butt, she had to wipe adults' butts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I just saw that there was not a lot of rest, of course, and even though she was in the home, like she would burn the midnight oil, she would burn the sticks on both ends, and so I knew that like as entrepreneurship, like super long word, super sexy word, I was just like, I don't know if y'all think it is what we think it is because I've seen my mom, growing up and she has still not taken a nap, you know what I mean? So, and I think of course that just goes with the narrative of the land of opportunity, things of that sort. So I think for me, I've pushed off and said like, no, I don't want to be an entrepreneur because I was like, the way I saw it, I was like, I would like to
Mm,
take a nap, thank you, and I would like to have time for my family and friends, thank you, and I'd like to eat some food that's actually good for me, thank you. And so I think that's why I've pushed it off for so long because I'm like, I've seen what it looks like and what it does to your body, and now she's still in her 70s, still working. I'm like, no,
mm.
thank you, mom. I love you, but there has to be another way. So,
Yes, so
what are
there
your thoughts
is.
on that?
So, one, let's start with the definition. I define entrepreneurship as being multifaceted and
Mm-hmm.
finding different paths and things that you love to do and actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What not defining yourself as one type of title or person. Trying being okay to trying and failing at different
Mm-hmm.
things because there is an entrepreneurship mindset. And I feel like a lot of people don't talk about the entrepreneurship mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let's start with we both know, right? We're not in corporate America. And again, that's our choice right now. And we choose. If we do go back, that's okay too. That's part of entrepreneurship because you sometimes have to do what you got to do, right? If
Mm-hmm.
that's your journey, that's your journey. So I think my definition is multifaceted of a
Mm-hmm.
human being. So I go
Mm-hmm.
back and I actually want to share a story where when I told my mom, so I actually not created, I co-founded Ace Next Gen in Miami, which is an Asian American entrepreneurial group nationwide and in Miami, which the group that you saw too in California. And when I told my mom that I co-founded in Miami, she says, "Oh yeah, your grandpa was an entrepreneur." And I
Mm-hmm.
looked at her, I'm like, "What?" Why didn't you tell me this? She's one of those people who likes to tell things later on in life. But
Yeah.
my grandfather was a Spanish professor. I was a teacher for almost 10 years, and then he
Mm.
had his own business. I'm like, oh wait, what? So
Mm-hmm.
if anything, she this allowed me to connect my dots of my ancestral roots of like entrepreneurship is forging your own path, forging the
Mm.
path that you actually want to live and create, and willing to take the steps back and sacrifices for yourself and moving forward, like that big jump when it does happen.
Mm.
There's a quote that I saw one of my friends post. It's just because you plant a seed doesn't mean that you eat the fruit of its labor the next day. So the fact
Mm-hmm.
that you're in California and I'm here and we're having this conversation, it's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So going back to sometimes our parents never process their trauma of what
Right.
they went through.
Mm.
And sometimes that trauma that wasn't processed came onto us. So for example, our parents sharing that they didn't have chinelas to walk to school because it hurt their feet, but they had to go to school because they knew there was an education. In a way, was them processing, even though they got to go on the other side of it, even and while they process, it kind of hurts us too. So in a way, their intention is to say, hey, you live such a beautiful life, but the impact does hurt us because that's the guilt that they may have not realized they put onto us. So it's
Mm.
kind of just a twofold, the intention versus the impact. Intention is
Mm.
to educate, the impact is sometimes harmful.
Mm-hmm.
So as first and second gens, like it's up to us how we take that in. Do
Mm.
in the end of the day, we can't change our parents. We can never change who they are. And we could also recognize and love them for who they are, but we get to choose what we want in our minds and in our brains and what we say yes and what we say no to.
But then
Mm,
also, of course, the experience of like, oh, like you were not only growing up with other Filipinos, but also just growing up in a very multi-ethnic community also. And how has that contributed to your upbringing?
I loved being around so many different communities because we got to learn about not only ourselves, but our cultures and finding
Mm-hmm.
the similarities of our cultures. One of my favorite questions is like, what kind of rice do you like to eat?
Hmm.
Because rice is such a simple grain, but it can be made in so many different ways, from Haitian black rice and beans to arroz con pollo, which is rice and chicken, or like all these different grains. But in one little grain can still unite us and still have different multifacets of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to connect with folks with different cultures through food, to be honest,
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
food is nourishing, it's loving, it's good for our soul, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how at least I always connected with a lot of folks from different cultures. And two, it was never always like you against me or me against the world. It's more like, hey, let's get to know each other. Or hey, I didn't really understand. Tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because we were able to see each other for who we are and not just what our cultures are, if that makes sense.
Tell me about like who you were on the playground, like because yeah, were you always
Oh,
yeah yeah just what was that little girl like on the playground?
Jessica on the playground was this little sensitive, chubby kid because she didn't really know how to communicate her feelings. So
Hmm.
I remember always walking around in the recess yard because I didn't know how to really communicate. There wasn't a language barrier. It's just I had a lot of feelings and emotions, and people just wanted to play. And I just felt I was a very insecure kid, to be honest. I was insecure, and I think that the insecurity derived from not only not having a lot of friends, which I did have friends, I wonder because my parents worked a lot. My parents
Hmm.
really, really worked a lot. And it wasn't something that I'm learning now as a life coach is sometimes because our parents worked so hard and they had to provide, they aren't necessarily emotionally available for us. So the
Mm-hmm.
emotional availability on how to hold space, how to ask us about our day, or but not even just ask about our day, but like going in more granular. Like I remember as a kid, when my parents went to like parent teacher night, like I wanted that my teacher to talk about me because that was the first time, and my parents
Hmm.
said, "Oh, you're good, everything's fine," and I'm like, "No,
Hmm.
I wanted to learn more. Like what's going on?" So it's not necessarily like I wasn't this like energetic human being as a kid. Like as a kid, I was actually really sensitive because I didn't know how to express my feelings and emotions, or even really learn how to play. which is kind of why I
Hmm.
do what I do today.
Hmm.
Please look at this. Ready? We're going messy here.
Oh, let's
I
do it.
I purposely talk about ending harmful cycles in the coaching work I do, and it's because I do it in my personal life right now. So the
Yeah.
other day, my father and I had he said a comment that rubbed me the wrong way, and I got defensive about my mom,
Mm.
and I immediately said, "Why did you say that?" No, and my my father is 1 out of 12, so
Mm-hmm.
just imagine 1 out of 12 born in the 40s. So my father, when he said that comment, I immediately like went in like, Dad, why'd you say that? And
Mm.
I was grown up, especially as like I was now, as you say, just say it. I was always told not to say a lot of things, like keep your mouth shut, keep your head down, or like what's that phrase in Tagalog? It's like wala nang hiya, but at the same time, like keep your mouth quiet, like don't start drama or don't like share
Yeah.
your thought opinions.
Yeah.
So every time when now as an adult, I would talk to my dad and I'd have an opinion because I want to share my thoughts. Him growing up was it's their way, that's it, no questions asked.
Right.
So you have that mentality, and then you have me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who wants to share, someone who's used to the this is our way and that's it because I'm older than you mentality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we got in a heated argument because I wanted to share what I thought.
Mm.
And he said, you always, every time I say something, you always have something back, and I'm always wrong.
Mm. Mm.
And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, you're not wrong. I just want to share my thought. So we're just going
Mm.
back and forth, and then it ends up being circles. And I had to realize, I'm like, oh, I just got triggered at that moment. So I had to
Mm.
take a step back. What he said was actually not wrong. It's just an actual comment. But
Mm.
there was a trigger in me in my 32-year-old self that brought me back to the stages of like when I couldn't communicate my needs to my dad.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So after a lot of intense labor, a lot of like back and forth, I looked at him, I held him, held his hand. I'm like, Dad, I don't want to talk to you like this. I don't want to raise
Mm.
my voice at you. And I'm sorry that I said that. However, this way of communicating needs to stop
Mm.
because my family, they're hard-headed, they're back and forth, they're passionate, and at the same time communicated, open communication and emotions are not necessarily invited from their
Yeah.
upbringing. So being
Yeah.
the person that has to actually stop it and like end those cycles, it takes physical, emotional labor that people don't realize that it's tough, it's scary, it sucks.
Mm.
So the carriers, as one of my colleagues, Cat, Shanta Cat
Mm.
says, we carry a lot of ish from generations and generations and generations. However,
Mm.
you can choose whether you want to carry it or you want to let it go.
I've been in situations with my mom where I'm like, I can see the little girl in her. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Mm,
how does my little girl talk to this little girl? You know?
yeah.
And I think that that's when I, at least when I like drop into that, I'm like, okay, like she just doesn't know any better at this point, you know? And I'm just like, how do I non-verbally even I'll get lower than her to let her know like we're on the same team. I still have reverence for you and I still honor you as my mom, but like also like we can still we can still try again. And I'm curious of your thoughts on that and how we're navigating this as a generation. Like we so happen to be in the generation that yes, we can talk to people from across, on different coasts, but we're
Mm,
also in the generation where we're having these opportunities to become entrepreneurs and have the tools and resources that might be a little bit easier than what our family had, our grandparents had. But also at the same time saying like I'm gonna also carry and also practice doing this work with our families. I think a lot of times it can be really easy to be like, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right?
yeah.
Or whatever the case may be. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And just yeah, just like what it means to be human nowadays and the vessels that we get to be in while navigating these
Oof.
different kinds of opportunities and challenges.
Oh, what a beautiful loaded question that was. So I'm gonna be very transparent. I just started this a year and a half ago when I moved back home.
Mm.
For
Mm-hmm.
most of my career, I was in New York City, checking off the boxes, living the
Well,
independent life. being purposely away from my family because I wanted
Mm,
to do that. So because I came back home, subconsciously and consciously, I didn't choose to be the carrier. It just
mm,
happened. Because if
mm,
I'm going to be in the same city as my parents, I want to actually have a beautiful, loving adult relationship with them while honoring our Filipino roots, while honoring me as an American, and while continuing the path that they started. This is the hard conversations that we're having, right? Because they say it's like, just keep it in the home, just keep it there.
mm.
But no, how do we actually end certain cycles? How do we end certain harmful thought processes and mindsets that only limit us and not actually let us achieve?
Hmm. I think one of those for you is the people pleasing. Tell us more about the people pleasing. I also, if you can somehow twirl in there when you started kind of unraveling yourself, you're not, I mean, maybe you still are the shy little girl on the playground, but yeah, when did she start coming out and sharing her feelings with the world and asking for what she
Oh,
wants and needed? Um,
oof.
yeah,
That,
tell us
so
about this
that,
people pleasing path.
the people pleasing task. Let's start with being the minority in a majority world. So I went to school in upstate Westchester County in New York, and I was one out of three Asians in my graduating college class.
Oh.
So yeah. So imagine my background of being in a very diverse city, having my
Hmm.
people, just being in like communities of Black, Brown, Asian, going to a very white school. Code There was a lot of code switching and during college, and as much as I love my college experience, I didn't really embrace who I was as a Filipino American. I was just
Hmm.
like, I was pretending I liked country. I was combining in my Irish friends because I went to an Irish Catholic school in Miami. So it was all this like trying to fit in a space that I wasn't necessarily fitting into. And that
Hmm.
wasn't until where I went to uh, I taught at I taught as a teacher how to advocate for my students, but teaching them how to advocate for themselves.
Hmm.
I believe that
Hmm.
I became a teacher not only logistically, I thought it was just to pay off my student loans, but internally and deeply, it was actually because I needed to relearn how to advocate for myself, to share my feelings, to communicate my needs, to learn how to read and comprehend again because I wasn't a big reader as a kid, and do all the things that I didn't get as a kid.
I want to clarify on my question in
Okay,
terms
go
of
ahead.
inclusion, right?
Ah,
We're currently in a culture where, yeah, we're just we are wanting to be inclusive, wanting to elevate underrepresented voices because being a part of these communities, that's a part of it. But also, I'm just gonna get straight to it. When we're working in these, we're saying we want to work with BIPOC folks. For me, cutie BIPOC folks, and I know there's moments for me where when white folks come around, like
mhm.
where's the tension of inclusion, but also being like we're serving these people. Like how do you navigate that? Um, yeah, how do you navigate that? Because it's like for me, it's like gosh, yes, there's in the conversations that we're having and capitalism and colonialism and all these things, but also I'm like. I've learned that for me, what hurts my heart is when I'm on the playground and I feel like we're at a point where it's like I can't even invite certain folks to the table because we're still building our own table. Just all of this. I'm just curious for someone who's in the similar boats of inclusion, but also wanting to work with specific communities. How do you toggle between that tension?
Oh,
I
yeah,
know, I know.
yeah. I toggle between that tension because and the end of the day, you know what you need and you know what you want to learn from. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the person you may learn from is a person who may have very different ideas and values from you.
Mm-hmm.
It's someone could be completely opposite of you. Yet, I the way that I toggle between the tension is I respect what I don't agree with and what can I learn and connect with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of actually, so for example, I during my women's leadership cohort, it was we had a man in the
Mm-hmm.
cohort because it's also important to educate folks and men and women's leadership. And Coach Pete, white man from California, recognized his privileges and he knew all of that. However, when he coached me on something that I was blocking myself on, he allowed me to see objectively. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute. why is this white man telling me this? But at the same time, he's not wrong at all. He's actually teaching me
Yeah.
something here. So
Yeah.
it's up to us whether we want to accept the tension or put away what's not serving us and accept what is serving us and connecting with us at that moment.
I'm just like, gosh, but we learn so much more also when everyone's in the room too, you know? And that
Hmm.
I'm only saying this because I struggle with that tension where I'm just like, yes, like how do we support folks who've been underrepresented and been marginalized? But at the same time, I was like, you know, like as much as straight white men can be annoying, there's this nonchalantness. They're like, they're just gonna do it. And I was like, if and sometimes when I'm around folks from similar backgrounds, I see us having to fall into the people pleasing and having to like watch our step and having and all these things. But sometimes when I'm with them, I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's just do it. And I'm like, yeah, you know. So it's like, I'm yeah, just
Because
trying to
society,
navigate that.
because society taught us not to. Literally,
Right.
if you think about the rules and like who had access to what, they taught us not to.
Yeah.
Systems are built so who can have power, right? But
Yeah.
now we're recognizing we can break those systems. They're invisible systems, but we could break them, right?
For me, in my perspective, it's just like that's where I'm at. You know what I mean? I was like, I
Yeah.
can't. It's for me, it's so exhausting having to like fight each other on whatever the
It's
case
so
may be.
exhausting. It's so exhausting. Why add more exhaustion? I don't
Exactly.
want to suffer anymore.
Yeah.
Honestly. I don't want to suffer anymore. We're not here to suffer. We're here to be
Exactly.
liberated, to have
E-
fun and play.
Exactly. And I still just want to play with everyone on the playground, dang it. So I know for me, I've struggled just being like, I'm gonna hang out with all of y'all. I would really love for all of us to hang out because I think we all have something to learn. But it's like, I say
Yeah.
this as teachers, you can't tell that kid to not come into the classroom.
Okay, so let's start with the finally saying yes to myself moment. Okay, you
Okay.
ready?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was 2001, going into 2002. I was right during the pandemic. I was one of the first teachers in New York City to teach in person. And I had an opportunity to continue teaching in a classroom, but there was a calling in me realizing like it's time to move on. I was teaching a lot of adults through diversity, equity, inclusion work, and I knew I wanted to do DEI, and this was during the height of George Floyd. So a lot of companies were like, let's do DEI work, let's do DEI work. And I was called to actually do it and to learn from it and wanting to be in that space. So one day I went to the principal's office and I gave my resignation letter 2 weeks in advance, right? But an hour later, they called me in the office and told me that my last day would be today. Because at the same time, 5 minutes after I had that conversation, another teacher quit as well. So it would have been two teachers quitting at the exact same day. So to
Wow.
cover it up, they just said that this will be your last day. And I
Hmm.
remember feeling liberated, but when I left that school, but then the next day feeling heartbroken because for the longest time I defined success based on my identity of being a teacher. I was
Hmm.
proud to be a teacher. I still am, but I was really like, oh my God, my identity's gone. Who am I? Like, what am I gonna do? Uh, so it wasn't just figuring that out, right? I'm like, I had no plan, by the way. I had no plan the day after I quit. Just I didn't go to another job. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta search. I gotta figure this out.
Wait, you
So it
put in your
wasn't
2 weeks. You put in your 2 weeks not having a plan.
correct.
Okay, you were like, I'm gonna figure it in 2 weeks, but oh no, it's actually happening today.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
In New York City, by the way, in New York City.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, it's not a cheap city. It's a very expensive city. Living on your own too.
Is it all that it's cracked up to be? Just out of curiosity.
I do love it though.
Yes.
It did. It made New York City made me the woman I am today. It really
Mm,
has. It's the grit. It's tenacity. It's the keep going and we choose what we want in our lives, right? So
mm,
it'll always New York will always have a special place in my heart because it made me who I am today.
mm,
So going back, not real having a job, not knowing what to do. I one thing I did know is I wouldn't grow in my apartment if I just stayed in and applied. If I just stayed in the house and applied. I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I follow this woman. Her name is Betty, and she was part of this woman and male allies and folks inclusive co-working space called Luminaries in New York City. So I go in and I see this beautiful building. There's these folks just learning, like working together, they're collaborating, they're on their computers, they're talking. And I'm like, what do they do for a living? Why are they not in their desk and their jobs? And why are they not like, what? How, Sway? Like, what's going on here? So I find out that all these folks either have their own businesses, they're entrepreneurs, or they're working from home, and this is their community. It's a space.
Mm.
So I'm like, oh, I can grow here. I can learn here. I can be uncomfortable here, but I could also, this can be a home for me because this is where Jess needs to evolve and become and be. So within 6 months of co-working and networking and connecting with the right people, I finally landed into diversity, equity, inclusion work as a facilitator.
Mm.
So that was beautiful because I got the job the day after my birthday. So that was God right there, just like, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
Opportunity came, and we realized, my partner and I realized, maybe it might be time to go home to Miami.
Mm.
He had an
Mm.
opportunity to start his business down here. I was working online. New York City is not cheap. And we
Mhm.
both knew that in order to live the create the life we wanted, we needed to take a big step back. And
Mm.
that hurt my ego. So
Mm.
I worked so damn hard to be in New York City, to live this nine to like be this financially independent life. And now I'm leaving it. What? Why would I
Mm.
do that to myself?
Mm.
Yet there was always a thing like, it's going to be worth it. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it.
Mm.
So
Mm.
packed up, took the train from Washington to Orlando, and moved back with my in-laws. And that year was a tough year because little did I know what I was grieving, but I was also in a high functioning depression, to be
Mm.
honest, because
Mm.
it was this life that I once had. I left it,
Mm.
and in a space that necessarily didn't see me as me. So that was pretty messy. Just navigating high functioning depression, navigating weekly panic attacks, navigating uncertainties, as you know, and navigating a space where that's not my space anymore. Because I
Mm.
used to have my own space for years.
Mm.
So it wasn't until, what was it? Not only women's leadership coaching, but the uncertainty of the tech recession, right? Last year, where a lot of tech roles were being laid off, and I was one of them. Just again, I worked this so hard just to go into DI work, and now it's all gone. So I'm like, all right, what do we do?
Mm.
What do we do?
Mm.
And it wasn't until me learning about women's leadership, and then I got that certification, and I get roles here and there. And I remember seeing Conscious Exchange's email marketing, like, do you want to create a business? Do you want to live a life of liberation? And I'm like, yes, yes. Oh my God, what am I doing? And
Mm.
I'll be honest, I started just say out of survival mode. I
Mm.
thought that I was gonna open a business and it was gonna make all this money and I'm gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. Wrong.
Mm.
Wrong, wrong, wrong.
Mm.
If anything, starting a business is the most inner work journey you can ever create for yourself,
Mm.
because the values and the mission, the thoughts, those are, and companies, it's already done for you. But when you're doing that work for yourself, that just opens up and unlocks a whole nother level of what you actually want to do and what you want to create in your life. So as I was navigating that, I'm like, oh, I need a lot of help. Like, I need a lot of mental help again. Like, I want to go back to therapy. Like, I've been going to therapy for years, but I wanted to go back and I wanted to unpack this because I'm just
Mm.
like, why am I still feeling this way? And it wasn't until therapy where we learned what survival mode is. And that was my big aha moment. Like, I've been living in survival mode my whole life.
Mm.
I thought that things were going to be taken away from me. I thought that I had to do this. I thought that I had to support other or people please for others, or it was just all these things. And it was so subconscious. It's still subconscious to this day. But now I recognize, I'm like, oh, it's not healthy for me anymore.
Mm.
So it was kind of this like healing moment where it's like, I've been quiet because I was taught not to say what I wanted to say. I've been quiet because I was living a life that I thought was success for me
Mhm.
because what was supposed to be. So Just Say It came about where I wanted to come up with when I learned about coaching, I'm like, oh, coaching is a form of mental health. It's a way to unlock your present so you can move forward with your life. What? That's a career? People do this for a life?
Mhm.
I've been doing this for years, unconsciously, for many people. And the beauty, though, of coaching is I don't tell people what to do. I actually am the third party perspective and I connect the dots for them so they can actually have a plan on what they want to do and say.
I love that. I love that. And so I know that you target a specific group. Why that group specifically?
Yeah, so Just Say It specifically helps first and second generations because, as you know, we were subconsciously taught to live in survival mode. And the things that we talk about within our sessions are the things that we couldn't talk about with our parents
Hmm.
or things with our titas or aunts and uncles because they are still in survival mode sometimes. Let's be honest. There's subconscious fears. There a lot of it's subconscious. And with Just Say It, we're able to unpack certain parts of our lives that I hold space for because, again, that's what I do best. I hold space for people individually. And I could also be a third party perspective of seeing things objectively and not always emotionally. Being very emotional, I could also be the objectable person as well.
Yeah. If you could go back a year ago, 2 years ago, what do you wish you would have known before embarking on this journey? And like, how could you have done something to better be prepared? You talking to me now, talking to yourself 2 years ago.
Something that I wish to be better prepared for is to, one, remember the uncomfortable. The uncomfortable is okay because being uncomfortable allows you to grow. That's what I believe, at least. To better prepare. Honestly, I wish I knew more about financial literacy. If there's money blockers that's happening because that's a real thing too, especially for first and second gens.
Mhm.
Sometimes money is a scary issue because that's a lot of what stress is causing us. And when we look at money objectively, it's like, okay, it's just a monetary thing. Yet when we do have money, there's freedom. So how can we actually look at it objectively? Be okay to accept the risks that you're taking and knowing if it'll be worth it in the long run.
Hmm. Tell us more about your vision for Just Say It. Like, what do you foresee
Mm,
for the future for you and for the folks you'll be helping?
yeah. The vision for Just Say It is for help is to allow folks not only to be liberated for their mind, but creating the path that they want to live, living the life they want to live, and also blocking harmful mindsets. Because sometimes the biggest barrier is our mind.
My final question for you is if you can go back to that little girl in the playground, what would you tell her? I know, she's so cute.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. I would tell her that all the big feelings that you have is okay. And it is
Yeah,
okay to feel those feelings.
yeah. I would have hugged you. Oh, I'd be like, just come play with
I'll hug you
us.
too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a
Jess,
cool one.
any last thoughts? Anything that you just want to maybe say to that 5-year-old, 5 years from now, 10 years, whatever you want to mark in this moment?
Oh, girl, you're doing it. We're
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's happened. We're here, and you're gonna
Mm.
continue doing it. Oh, I could see her. I see that 5, 10 year Jess. I don't know how I'm gonna get there yet, and I know that I need to just pause and actually dream big because for the longest time I didn't believe in my dreams. I didn't even have the ability to dream because I was in survival mindset. So this is me, Jessica Velasco, on May 21st, 5:40 Eastern time, allowing myself to dream and to actually think about it and pausing and writing it down because I am a manifestor, I am a generator, and the things that I've manifested in my life today does happen.
Mm.
So now it's time to actually think bigger and dream
I
bigger.
love that. I love that. You're a manifesting generator?
I'm a generator technically. I do manifest things, but I am a
I'm
generator.
also a generator. Love building things. Awesome.
And
Well, you can say, hence what? Hence what, Jess?
Hence why you were taken back at the event and you didn't know what to do with yourself when I was working the room and you weren't working the
It
room.
was so hard. I was just like, oh, press the button, press this button like crazy because you got nothing else to do. It's fine.
But that's leadership, though.
Yeah.
It's learning how to take the steps back and
Hmm.
learning how to actually put ourselves in the places that we're not used to because we're always used to working the room. And it's like, oh,
Mm.
sometimes you just got to sit and be like,
It
yeah,
is. It was.
yeah,
It was nice to rest. Thank you for that reminder.
yeah.
Thank you again for being on the show, and we will
Thank
talk
you.
very, very soon.
Thank you, thank you, and thank you for allowing us to share the messiness. Because let's be real, people think entrepreneurship is glorified. Nope, 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 period. It's all the messy things that happen. So happy to be that space, and thank you again. We'll
Appreciate
chat
you.
soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right, y'all. I hope that y'all really enjoyed that conversation with Jess. And just to be fully transparent with you, it's rare for me to be able to talk to someone who, it's kind of a similar avatar. That's not something or someone that I meet very often, someone who tries to be inclusive and also really realizing, oh, it's coming from a place because we weren't included when we were younger or we didn't feel accepted when we were younger. And so I think that's something to think about, y'all. Like when we're finding our way is like, what are these things that we experience maybe more often that we would like, that we would want to help creatively solve? And so again, like just getting to know Jess and knowing like first off, like I want to acknowledge the growth that we've come so far from as little people on the playground, but also like how do we pay attention to those dots too, of those things that have always lit us up? And so I love that she shared that this wasn't this thing that just like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It's like, no, I've been doing this work. And I think that's something that I've been experiencing while doing this show with y'all. It's like I was able to start it because I've been doing this for a decade now. It's like I'm just going to start it again, but now it's going to, every time and every transition comes with more and more intentionality. And so I just appreciate Jess for wanting to serve this population. I think it's such a unique population being a part of it, and also it's a really exciting population because again, we are the ones that are on new land, new territory, and trying to chart some uncharted paths. And so I love that she's providing a place for us to not only unpack these things, because it's a lot to unpack, y'all, and also a place for us to play. I think that that's something that's going to be super transformative, because I think coming from backgrounds where we always have to be like productive, and of course seeing on social media where we're having to always overwork and like hustle and do all those things, like this is going to be the transformative work in our generation of how to balance the two. And so I'm just so excited to know that Jess is fighting her fight, I'm fighting my fight, but we're also fighting this fight for humanity together. And I think that's the best part about connecting the dots, is knowing that one, y'all are not alone, and young people, we're fighting for you. We're fighting for ourselves too. But like, I think a lot of times we may think that there's a lot of hopelessness in the world, but I hope that when you come to these interviews that you see that there are people doing such amazing work, all across the globe and on different coasts. And so again, I just want to say, Jess, thank you so much for coming onto the show and for sharing the work that you're doing. Again, y'all, if that's something that you want to do with her, go to her pages. I'll put all of those links below. But most importantly, just know that you're not alone in this process and that we're all in this together. So thank you all so much for watching Connecting the Dots. If you all want to subscribe, do the thing. If not, do your thing too. And stay tuned for the next episode, because it's going to be, just another person out in these streets fighting for a better world. All right, y'all. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.